Hey guys, welcome back to this lecture, Run as Docker Container. In this lecture, we will see how we can run the Prometheus in a Docker container and how we will expose the port of container so that we can access the Prometheus from the EC2 machine, that is our Linux operating system, right? So let us quickly jump onto the demo. So here, as you can see on my screen, I'm inside my Linux operating system, and now it's time to check whether I do have the Docker daemon running or not. So for that, I'll check for the Docker service if it is already running, which I can do using this command systemctl docker. As I can see, it is active and running, and now it's time. I'll see whether any container is running or not. For that, I'll use docker ps command. Okay, now docker ps command has resulted into an empty data, right? So that means no container is running currently. Okay, now we'll start working on the Prometheus container. Okay, so as we know, like Docker container always works on the Docker image. So you should have an image on which your container will start, right? And your image has all the definition of your container, how it will start, what will be the part of that container. So that is already part of your image. Okay, so here in our demo, we'll be using the Prometheus image provided by the Prom. Okay, and that we will be installing, that will be downloading from the Docker Hub basically. So if any of you doesn't know about Docker Hub, then Docker Hub is the portal where you can find all the Docker images that are freely available to use. So here if you go on hub.docker.com, you can look for the images whichever you want. Let's say we are looking for Prometheus image, so I can search it here like this. Okay, so I can see this image is available here. It was last updated 5 days ago. Okay, so now I'll be using this particular image to start my Prometheus. Okay, so for that, what I'll do, one thing I can do is first pull the image inside my operating system and then start the container, or I can directly run the container, and in the backend my system will automatically pull the image from the Docker Hub. Okay, so just to explain you better, I'll start from the pulling so that you are also aware of how to pull the image. So I'll pull the image using docker pull command, and here I'll give the image name. Now if I'm writing prom/prometheus only and I'm not specifying the tag here, that means it will pull the latest image available for this particular name. Okay, so it's completely fine if you are not giving the tag. If you want a particular specific tab to provide, then you'll have to write it as colon and then tag, whatever tag it is, whether it is latest or 5.3 or whatever it is. Okay, so now in my case I'll take the latest one, so I will just enter it. Okay, so it has started pulling the image here. As you can see, it is pulling the image in different layers. So it is as how we are defining the image in our image basically. So that's how it downloads it. Okay, so now if I want to see whether my image is available in Docker or not, then I'll see it via docker images command. I can see image is already downloaded here. So now every time I'll start a container on this particular image, it will not download it from the Docker Hub. Instead, it will use the image that is already available in my Linux machine. Okay, so now as we have already pulled the image, now it's time to run the container out of it, right? So for that, what I will do, I'll run it as docker run. Now I need to give the port number on which I want to expose it inside my EC2 machine. Okay, so I know it uses the 9090 port, so I'll give it like this, and then we need to provide the image name or image ID. So I can use this image name or repository name as Prometheus, or I can use this image ID here. Okay, I'll just enter here. Okay, so now I'm getting an error. What it is saying, error response from daemon, driver failed. Okay, error starting user LAN proxy, listen TCP4 colon 9090 bind address already in use. That means on which port I am exposing this container inside my Linux machine, that port is already in use by some other application or some other process. So now it's time we troubleshoot this. For that, what I'll do, I'll check which process is using this port. For that, I'll see netstat-tunlp and then I'll grab for this port. Okay, so I can see this particular process. Oh my god, this is the process which we have started in the last lecture, where we were running the process from the pre-compiled library. So that means on a particular EC2 machine, no two processes can use this common port. Okay, so a port cannot be shared by two processes at the same time. At a time, a single process can use a particular specific port. Okay, so now if we want to run this container on this port 9090, what I'll have to do, either I'll have to kill this particular process with PID 3307, or what I can do, I will change the EC2 host port here. Okay, so this is the host port. The first section is the host port before colon, and the after colon port number is for the container port. So what will happen in that case if I change it to suppose 9091? So that means my container will be exposed on 9091 port on my EC2 machine, and the container port will still be same. So inside the container, my process will be using this particular port only, but on my EC2 machine it will be exposed on 9091. So let us do it and let's see what is happening now, or it works or not. 9091 colon 9090, and then I need to give the image. Okay, so that's great. It has started. It has thrown the logs over the std out. That's why we are seeing it here. Okay, so it is saying, okay, it is listening on 9090 because this is the container log. So this is showing the container port here. We cannot assume it to be the EC2 host port or your machine board. Okay, so now I want to validate whether that particular port or Prometheus is running on 9091 or not. So what I'll do for that, I'll copy the public IP and I will check on 9091 port. Okay, it's taking time. Okay, that means there is something wrong in it. My browser is basically not able to access this particular port on this machine. So what could be the reason? The reason could be because the security group I have with this instance, that is not having any room or rule that allows my traffic to go via this port. Okay, so as you can see in the security group, only 9090 and 80 port is allowed on my EC2 instance. Okay, so what I need to do, I need to create one more rule here and I'll allow 9091 port as well, so that I can access it from the outside. So what I'll do, I'll add a rule here, I'll make it custom TCP, I'll make it 9091, and here I'll select my IP only, so that it is accessible by my IP only. Okay, now okay, great, it has started now. As you can see, you are seeing the Prometheus console here. You can see the build information here. This is the latest one. Okay, so now it's proved. Okay, my container is running fine. Now if you want to see what are the two processes running, or whether what happened to the earlier process that it was running on 9090, so let us do one thing. Let me quickly jump onto the instance and make another session. Okay, I'll switch to user, and now I want to see what are all the processes running in my system related to Prometheus. Okay, one is this and one is this. Okay, Docker run is the container that is running for Prometheus, and this is the process which we started during the last lecture. Okay, great. So we are done with this. In this lecture, we have learned how we can run the Prometheus in a container. But guys, this is not it. This is just how we run the Prometheus as a container or as a process, ad hoc process. But there are a lot of more things that we need to learn about these containers only. Now, suppose you might have noticed while running this container, I have nowhere highlighted the part of configuration file. So how it is taking the configuration file, right? And which configuration file is referring. So where I would manage that, or how would I manage that? For that, in containers, there are multiple ways. One way is to mount that particular path inside the container to the EC2 machine directory. Okay, so what will happen in that case? Now suppose inside the container my Prometheus configuration file is inside etc Prometheus and then prometheus.yml. What I will do, I will mount that particular path to my EC2 machine, and now once I'll do it, so I'll be able to modify the file from my machine level. I'll not have to go inside the container and then update the file. Rather, I would I will be able to modify it from the outside, that is from the machine. That also we can test and I'll check it. So for that, first I will close this process. Now to show you, I've started it in the foreground. Okay, now we'll run it in the background. Okay, so now it's time. I'll run this container in the background. Okay, now so the logs are still uh, flowing over the std out, that's why we are seeing it. Okay, now I'll check whether the container is already running or not. It is already running. Now I want to run one more container where I want to see the configuration file for that. Okay, so let me do one thing for this. We already have one configuration file where it is Prometheus and then prometheus.yml. Okay, so what I'll do, I'll copy it from here and I'll bring it over the home. Make a directory here, container, let's say. I'll move prometheus.yml container. Okay, I'll go inside this container. Now I will run a new container on port 9092. This is the machine port or host port, and container port will be 9090. Now the next thing is I want to mount my volume, my EC2 volume with the container volume or the container path. So for that I'll do /root. That will be the host part, root container, and then prometheus.yml, and on the right side I will be having the container path. So that will be etc prometheus and prometheus.yml. Okay, now I'll give the image reference here, which image it will be using. Now I'll make it ampersand. Okay, so this will again start the process in the backend. Okay, so now let us see whether this container is also running or not. There are two containers running, and this is the one which was started 7 seconds back. Okay, now let us do one thing quickly. Let us allow 9092 port again. Okay, I'll access it. 92 port, it is working. Okay, so here I can see my config file inside the container is etc prometheus.yml. Now what I have done, I have mounted my Prometheus file available here to the containers path where the existing Prometheus file was. So now what I can do, let us see this prometheus.yml. Here I have not given anything else apart from these default rules here. Okay, so let us do one thing here. I'll rename this as the Prometheus 1 and I'll save it. Okay, now obviously to make it affected, what I'll have to do, I'll have to restart the container so that it can read the configuration from here. So before that, let me refresh it and we will see whether it is working on the fly or not. Okay, that we can see from here in the targets. You can see it is showing job name as the Prometheus. Now it's time we restart the container. So this was my container. I will restart it. Okay, so this is again started. I'll refresh it here. Okay, great. Now you can see it here. It is showing as Prometheus 1, which this is what we have changed in the job name. Okay, here we can see the target is up and healthy. So this is how we map the configuration file from our EC2 machine to the container, right? The same thing applies for the other directories as well. Now suppose you are running any container where you want to map a particular path from inside the container to the EC2 machine or your underlying host, you can do it using the volume mount flag. So this was about it. There are a lot of things again which we will see throughout the course, so let us go step by step so that it makes more sense and more easy to learn. So I'll see you in the next lecture. Thank you.